Very established company like that.
What sort of work did your father do?
He was basically in the military all the time. He had gotten called up in World War II. And from World War II, then, of course, Korea broke out very soon after that. So I don't remember too much of him, except that the parts that I do remember, he was in uniform most of the time.
Frank's father worked for Western Electric. He was a sprayer, worked in a spray booth, spraying phones, you know, the jackets of them.
His father died when Frank was 12 years old.
And I said to him, Frank, now that Daddy is gone, how do you feel? And he just looked at me, he said to me, I would rather you not ask me, because I don't want to discuss it. So we never, ever discussed it again. Never. To this day, we never discussed his father.
Is Frank afraid of emotions?
I think Frank has blanked out a lot throughout his life that he didn't. And I think that's why he's the personality that he is. But it's an art, believe me, to blank things out. It's not that easy to blank things out.
And Frank has developed that art.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Because it makes your life so much easier. It makes your life so much easier.
At the age of 12, Frank was the only male in an all-female household. Adele was 5 at the time.
I'm proud of him as a brother. It was an injustice, I think, that was done to him. He was singled out, kind of. And he had to do what he had to do.
Lorraine is the baby of the family.
I look at my brother as a totally different person than what I read about. And I don't know, when I'm with him, or it just, to me, that seems so out of range. This Idi Amin or the gun dealings or whatever went on. I don't look at it as, it doesn't really even enter my mind.
Are you concerned when you read about Frank's association with Idi Amin and people like that?
Concerned
Are you worried that he should mix with such people?
For his safety, or because...
Morally, are you worried?
I don't know how much of it is true and how much of it isn't. So I don't think of it in those terms. I believe in Frank, and in believing in him, and I always will believe in him, and I'll always stick by him. If he feels what he's doing is right, then it's right.
Is there any side of Frank's character that you're ashamed of?
No. Not at all.
Paradoxically, it was in the company of these warm and generous people that we began to grasp the influences that had shaped Frank Terpil. Did Frank give you any problems as a child? As a teenager?
Well, yes, once. But it was something that, like, I think I told you about the machine gun.
She may be referring to an illicit machine gun sale.
When you were how old?
15. Yes. I had bought a machine gun. It had been confiscated from somebody. I bought it from a policeman, as a matter of fact. And saw a margin of profit that could be made by selling it to somebody else, which happened to be the son of my high school science teacher.
The first thing I know, Frank was arrested. And they called me at work, and they had Frank down at the station house, and they wouldn't let me see him. But, like, he was in a room, and I passed the door, and I just said to him, whatever your story is, stick to it.
Were you angry with Frank for owning a machine gun?
No, I felt sorry for him. Because I felt sorry for him because it wasn't a case of he was doing anything malicious. He wasn't going out and robbing people. He wasn't going out and sticking them up. It was just... He was creative, I guess. I don't know. I guess this was a big thing to put this thing together. Yeah, I mean, because this is Frank. He was always great imagination.
You weren't worried that Frank had a machine gun?
No, not at all. Not at all.
The morality of New York is my morality. It's how I was brought up, and it depends on how you view morality. During my, I guess you may call them formative years, we were taught to obey, I guess you may say, the precepts of the law in a different framework. I certainly learned at a very early age that a dollar placed in the right hand could do wonders.
Is that a fair comment?
Is it fair?
Is it fair to suggest that in Brooklyn, New York, corruption is almost a way of life?
Anthony, where have you been? You mean that you haven't heard of corruption in New York City? I think all the big cities are so corrupt. I would say even in the small towns are so corrupt. New York City especially is corrupt, corrupt, corrupt.
Farrell's Bar, Brooklyn. 4 miles from here, in the DA's office, we had been persuaded that Terpil was beyond the pale of decent society. Here, there's another perspective. Frank Giardino has known Terpil since they were 14 years old.
He was an international firearms dealer, an accredited international firearms dealer. It was a business that he developed. He became successful at. He raised a family with. Something done all within the structure of our society.
Are you saying that Frank Terpil has been unfairly singled out?
I believe, in my mind, one of the worst things that can happen to an individual is exile from this country. Because this is the place. It's the best place in the world. I believe Frank feels that way. I believe Frank wants to come home. I believe he's done a lot for this country. And in some ways, he deserves a medal for what he's done.
In 1958, when he was 19, Frank Terpil found a way out of Brooklyn by joining the army. 7 years later, he was recruited by the CIA and trained for the Technical Services Division, the Dirty Tricks Brigade. Brooklyn morality, and a great deal more, was now legitimate.
Some of their operations, without compromising situations that had actually occurred, literally went from the evaluation of mind-distorting materials such as LSD, which I had not been involved in, it's a different section, through bugging, which of course everybody is aware of, technical surveillance, that's called, through assassinations.
Terpil traveled the world in the service of the CIA. In 1970, when he was just 31, he was stationed in New Delhi. He had already come a long way from Brooklyn.
I lived with the Raj atmosphere and mentality. Lived very well. I lived in a large house in West End Colony with the normal amount of servants, which were from 13 to 15. I had a large car and Cadillac.
Was it possible to get all those things on your salary?
No, one had to supplement his income a wee bit.
How did you supplement your income?
I would collect foreign currencies from various individuals, groups.